ora. Alright, so this next one, we're going to do something quite similar, but we're going to focus on the look of it, and we're going to learn something called an event listener. Okay, so let's just X out of that and open File Explorer, and we're going to find the folder that has all of our things in it. I think I called it JavaScript projects. Let's make a new project by making a new folder, 03, and call this one Google Fonts. That's the main thing we're going to work on here. And then we can right click the folder, open with code. I've got to go show more options. Open with code. And now we're in a new project. Cool. All right. So over here, as you probably have guessed, lowercase index.html. Now we've got an HTML file. Start typing HTML. Click on that 5 version here. And we've got our boilerplate. Let's set up a place for our script. And let's make a place for our styles. And change the title to Google Font Example. Okay, save that. Go live. And did not want that. Alright, so the only thing here is nothing, because there's nothing in the body, so we don't see anything here. Because we changed the title up in this head section, we do see the title change here. Now, think for the styles. I'm kind of just going off the top of my head here. I don't have like a script and I don't have an example code. But I think we'd like to get everything nicely centered up. So for that, we're going to make a div and give it what's called a class. Right? Now, class works a lot like ID, but classes can be reused. IDs are specific for that individual HTML element. Classes, we can have several divs with class equals container if we wanted. So I just want to expose you to that, right? And up here, to define a class, we use dot container and margin. I say 5px auto. This is a centering technique, and so we can see it. Background color, and this is just up to you. I'm going to go with like a beige. Control S, see that? Not really seeing. My eyes can't really make a difference. Probably going to go into a very light purple and see if that helps. Okay, well, not seeing that container. Let's define the body. So that is just a raw HTML. So we don't use dot, we don't use hash. We're defining this body tag. So I'm going to change the background color for the whole thing to something that goes with that, which is kind of like a light blue. But that's a bit intense. I'm going to dial it a bit more muted tone. Alright, so that worked fine, but my container, it's not really showing up. Probably because I don't have anything in it. Let's put a h1 tag in. Google font example. Yo. Okay. Now that container's showing up. It looks ugly, but it's showing up. We're going to try to make it look better. All right. So first thing is, yeah, maybe not so shocking of a pink sort of thing. A little bit more subtle would be good. That's a bit better. It needs, I'm going to do a text align, center. That should center everything in there. So this margin, just to let you know what it does, it defines what's around the element, right? So we want 5 pixels around it. Auto means to center it left and right. We'll get more in depth with that. Technically, there's supposed to be a space after that 5px. In fact, this brings up a good opportunity. Now, you may have noticed my H1 is out of whack. It still works. Not like Python. Python has to be lined up properly. HTML and CSS can be all on line 1 and still work. And I'm going to tab that over. And I think I'm going to go to extensions this time. And I'm going to install this thing called Prettier, code formatter. Yep, trust them. 57 million people agree. And what this does is allow me to be really lazy. So to get the Prettier extension to work, we actually have to set it as the default formatter for Visual Studio Code. And here's how to do that. You click on this little cogwheel and go to Settings. And then just up here in Search, just type Format. And this should come up. Editor Default Formatter. Right now it's set to none, which is why it's not working. And in there's lots of formatters. We want this one we just installed, Prettier. Right, and this box here, Format on Save, make sure that's ticked. And there's other options here. Just Format on Save is probably the one we want. Right, and then when we come back over here, if we want to save this, it should clean up our code for us. It even puts semicolons at the end of lines. So, I mean, lazy wins. This type of textual programming, there's so much opportunity to make one little mistake, like forget a semicolon, and your whole code doesn't work, and you're like, what's going wrong? And it's like, oh, one little thing. So this just helps to mitigate all that risk. So I recommend using it. You don't have to, but it does help. I think I've lost my little project. Here we are. Okay, now this looks ugly. It does. We need to make it look nicer. So I've defined a margin for this container, and that's just what's around it, like the space around it. And the auto part is what centers it on the horizontal axis. I'm going to add some padding, and that's the space inside. And I'm going to put 4px for 4 pixels. And okay, so now we're going to fix this not very attractive looking container by putting a border around it. That's just border. I want to make it 2 pixels wide, solid, and black. Black, the shortcut is #000. Control S. First thing, notice how it put the semicolon for me. Thank you. And now I've got a blocky box with a border around it. And that's not bad. I may bump the margin down just a tad. See if that changes anything. So that's the outside. And we can't really see it because it's such a short thing, and there's no other div containers to compete with it. So One thing I do want to do though is round off the corners. So that's going to be border radius, this one. And I'll start with, say, 10px to see how that looks. Control S. There you go. I think it's a lot nicer now. Okay, so that's just our header in the container. We're going to keep putting stuff in this container. Like, actually, no. We're going to make a whole new div called container. And this time, I'm going to show you the Emmet shortcut. So we type div dot container and then enter, and it will set us up with a class of container. Right. Okay, so inside of our new container, we're going to put what's called a text area. Text area is actually an input type, but it looks a bit different, right? In this text area, we're going to put rows. How many rows do we want? And I'm going to put, say, 40. Oops, inside the quotes is better. And then columns is cols equals, same thing, I'll put like, I don't know, 5. That turned out weird. So I'm going to adjust these, say rows 4, columns 5. Okay. What about 50? That's a bit more. I can type multi-line stuff here. That's what I want. It's also draggable and adjustable. So that's quite a useful text input. And it works just like the other one. You can give it an ID. ID equals, say, input. Don't know why the quotes thing isn't happening for me today. All right, so ID equals input. And that's going to allow us to, take some input from the user. So placeholder equals, let's give them some instructions. Type your message here. Right. Now placeholders, once you click there and start typing, they disappear. They're just handy so you don't have to put something outside. And it eliminates confusion as well, because the message is in the actual box. So you're not called, where do I put it? In this one or that one? It makes things a little clearer. Pardon me. That's why I like to use them. Now, I don't like the fact this is butted right up against. So let's start defining the style of our input. So that's hash because it's an ID input. And margin, I'm just going to say 5px, and that should give us 5 pixels all the way around, just to make some spacing there. All right. Also, this rows and columns things, there's better ways of doing it. You can actually do that with CSS. So what I'm going to do is just delete that and manipulate it with CSS. So there'll be width, let's say 100%. So now we're taking up, well, that's 100% of the page. Maybe that's not the one we want, is it? That's actually really fine. We can just go to 80%. That's enough. That'll good. Or up to you, 90%. And height, we can do another percentage. Let's just say 20% and see what that looks like. Didn't really change anything. See if we can go 50%. That's not changing anything either. Yeah, let's just leave height off. We don't even need it. Cool. All right. So now we got an input and now we need an output. Now the whole point though is this Google font thing. But first I want to get the functionality working, and then we'll learn how to get Google fonts and use them, because it's a very cool skill. All right. So I don't want to have a submit button on this one. All right. I'll have a button down here called clear. I'll just stick that in there now. It's going to be inside this div. Now, my text is going off the page. What's the solution for that? Well, easy one is Alt Z. Up in the menu somewhere, which somewhere in here, View, Word Wrap, there it is. But Alt Z is something you use so much you're just going to remember it. So underneath the text area, I want to put a button. So that's going to be button. And I want the button to say clear. That's all. We'll use that later. Oh, that's going to need some padding. So up here, I'm going to go padding like before. And again, 5 pixels. Now it's nice and tidy. We got space around everything and it's not jammed together. Alright, so that clear button is really so when the user types something blah blah blah, they can clear it out like that. In fact, maybe we'll do that functionality first. We have to give this button an ID though. ID equals clear. Alright, so what was it? On click? That's the one. On click, we're going to run a function that we haven't made yet. So let's go make that function. So from the previous example, we know to make a function, we just type function, give the function a name, we'll call this clear input, and then we put the smooth brackets, which allow for parameters to be passed into the function. That'll make more sense further down the road. Curly brackets, and inside of the curly brackets, we put the logic for this little function. Functions, again, they're like little machines that do jobs for us, okay? So the first job I want it to do is just to console log something, just to let me know that it actually fired off, right? And then to actually clear this text input, it has an ID, that's helpful. Let's go document.get element by ID brackets. This is ID input. We're going to change the value to empty quotes, semicolon, like that. I'm going to click save. Now, if I type something here, and if I click clear, nothing happened. There's a bug. I want you to hit pause and see either I made a mistake or I left something out, and I want you to figure out what that is. So hit pause and see how you go. Did you find it? Yeah, thought you could. It's right here. I didn't actually call the function. It's still empty. I have to put that in here. Input, just like that. And now on click on this button, it will call the function clear input, console log that, and then change the value to emptiness, which should actually make the placeholder reappear. So let's test it. It worked. Console log, and the placeholder is back there because it's cleared out. Type something, cleared again. One thing to note is in the console log, it incremented to 2 because it's the same output message. So we have some functionality. We can clear that input field out. But that's not where we're going with that. That's just a convenience for the user, right? Also notice I put a line break in there. That's in between the text area and button. The reason for that is if I go full screen, I want that button to stay underneath, right? If otherwise it would end up over on the right and just not look as cool. That's why I did that. So let's go back to, there's another way to get the screen half and half is to drag this to the right, and then it'll want you to select what's going to go there. Okay, so the whole idea of this is that the user types something in there, and then it shows up in a fancy Google font down here. Right now, obviously, it's not doing that. So let's set it up for that. So one thing I want to correct from all my previous videos, best practice is to actually take this script function. I've selected it all. I'm going to go Control X, is to put it just above the closing body tag. Now I'm going to save that. It should pretty it up. That's actually considered best practice. Putting it in between the body and HTML like I showed you, it works. JavaScript is very forgiving, but I'd like to show you things really like properly, so there you go. Not a big difference, but this is ideal. All right, so to get this whole thing to work over here, underneath this container, I'm going to create a new container, and this time I'm going to give it an ID. So I'm going to still use the image style, div. Instead of dot for class, I'm going to go hash for ID, and just call this output. Output text, and hit enter, and it sets up a div for me. And Control S. Now there's not going to be anything in there because we're going to add text to it programmatically. So on this text area, input field, we're going to make an attribute called onKeyUp, like that. All right, and that's going to listen to the keyboard, and when a key is lifted up, it should fire something off. But we need to make that thing that it fires off. So underneath that function, make sure you're not inside of the function, like here. Underneath the curly bracket, come down, and let's write a whole new function. We're going to call this display text. Okay, so the logic of it is whatever is here gets represented in the output thing here, or down here. So first thing we need to do is get the value of what's already been typed. So that's going to be a variable. So let user text equals document get element by ID, and this is input is the ID for this input, and we want the value of that semicolon. So now we have user text. Let's just make sure that we've got that log user text. Okay, cool. So Control S. So now let's see if, well, I know it's not going to fire off, and I know you know why, because I didn't add, just like last time, I didn't add it here. So that's going to be display. Oh, cool, it's helping us. And put the brackets. That says, hey, I want to key up, fire off the display text function, which is here. So save that. And now type something, and that's logging to the console down here, see? So whatever I type here is console logged. So every time I lift a key, it does a new console log. That's pretty cool, but it's also sloppy and it's going to get really messy down here. So we don't actually need that. So I'm going to double click. What is it? Triple click actually. 1, 2, 3. Just hit enter, delete that. All right, and then under here, what we do want is what the stuff that's inside here, the text in here, which is nothing by default, to show up instead of console logging. So that's going to be document get element by ID. What did we call this? Output text. Did I spell it right? If you don't get the spelling right, it doesn't know what ID. Yep. and this is going to be inner text. You can see here equals whatever this variable is at that moment, which is user text. Notice how I use those prompts. I don't like spelling mistakes. So Control S, and now let's clear that and type something here, and it's working. Cool. And if I clear here, nothing happened. Well, that worked as before. We need to clear that out. Based on what you've seen here, I want you to pause the video and see if you can figure out on your own. We've done this before. There's no new thing to be taught. There's just, I need to add something to something for this to clear out as well as that. See, right now, I type that and hit clear. That clears out, but that doesn't clear. I wonder if you can figure that out. So pause it and see if you can. Okay, so this line here in clear input is what gets rid of it here, and that's working. Why don't we do the same thing for the output text? So I'm going to triple click this line, Control C for copy, Control V, paste over top, Control V, paste over top again. And that's like a speed thing. And just change this to output text. Instead of value, it's going to be inner text. Inner text is nothing. Let's check that. Blah, 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 blah. And clear. It's cleared. So all the functionality is in place, but the whole point of this is to make Google Font show up. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And it's pretty cool. I'm going to go full screen for it because we don't really need console log now. Let's open a new tab and type in, I think it's fonts.google.com. Yeah, I actually remembered that. Wow. Sometimes my memory works. Amazing. Okay, so we're going to look for two different kinds of fonts. One, easy to read, and one I call decorative, right? So let's start with the easy to read one. We've got these feeling filters. There's other filters. Feel free to use whichever ones you want, really. I'm going to go with calm, right? And I'm going to pick one that I think looks easy to read, and I guess calm. I could spend a long time looking at fonts, but that one catches my eye. So I'm going to click on that, and then click on Get Font, and that will put it in my little font cart thing. Then go back to fonts, and same thing, filter. Instead of feeling, you can choose appearance, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go Art Deco. Nah, change my mind. Art Nouveau. And look for one of these decorative type fonts here. Okay. Oh, I see. It's multi-filter, so Calm and Art Nouveau. Well, I'm going to X out of the Calm, and find one that I think looks pretty cool. And there's lots of cool ones here. I'm going to go with that one, just because I don't want to waste half an hour, because I do. I love looking at fonts. So I'll select that one, and then select Get Font. Now, I've got two font families selected. That's my easy to read one, and that's my decorative one. So I want you to do the same. And when you're done, click on this thing that said Get Embed Code. Right? And conveniently, they give you all the code you need to connect these fonts to your little web page. So I'm going to click Copy Code. Then I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code. And this all goes in the head section. So I'm going to put it underneath title and above style. It definitely needs to be above style. So Control V, paste. And that's it. I'll leave that there. Now to use these styles, it's given some example. So mine's called Poirier 1, and it's shown me how to use that in a CSS style. I don't need the I don't need that part. I just need the definitions. So I'm gonna copy and then go back to Visual Studio Code, and I'm gonna make everything in the body of my page follow those rules. All right, so Control V. Right, and then let me save that, and I might as well do it all in one go. So this other one called Aladdin, they give it to you as well. I'm going to copy this whole class definition. So copy code. And then I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code. We're done here now. How do I go back to, yeah, half and half. Click that and that. Cool. Go back to my Google font example. As you can see, it's already conforming to that Google font. Now, before I go any further, make sure you're outside of the other definition bracket. So Control V, paste that whole definition in there, and Control S. All right, so that's a class. It's called Aladdin Regular. I'm going to shorten it to just Aladdin. It'll be fine. And we won't see that yet because I haven't assigned it. Now, because I put this font definition to the body, everything in the body, except for what's in this text field, but see, even that's showing up with that other font. Okay. I want it to show up with the Aladdin font. So to do that, I've already got a class named Aladdin. Elements like this, you can have multiple classes. So you put a space, L-A-D-D-I-N. There you go. And that overrode, it's not capital A, it's lowercase a, still work though. Yeah, and that overrode the default one. This one should still work as before, like that. But that's not really big enough. I want to make it bigger. So that's going back to here. Font weight, I'm going to go to, no, I'm going to define its ID output text. I'll just copy that and make a whole new definition for that specific ID and call it font size equals, let's just say 20px and see how that looks. It's a bit bigger. I'm going to bump it up to say 24. I have to type something for it to show up because yeah, that's a lot more readable. Also change the font weight. Let's just say bolder. Let's see if that does much for us. Yeah, way easier to read. So cool. Now that only defines what's in this output box. It doesn't define anything else. So cool. And since we have that, we can margin, say 10px auto to center it up. That means our stuff we type is going to be a little bit, well, didn't really do anything there. Oh, we can go text align, center. That should center it up. There it goes. So that's pretty much the gist of it. We could do lots of little tweaks and stuff. Like here's an independent project. This output text div. We've already got the definition here. Why don't you put a background color and a border, but different from the one we did here. But that could serve as an example for how to do that. So that's something you can do on your own to improve it. But look, we actually have a functional little thing. Clear that out. We have liftoff. Cool. There you go. See you in the next one.